Hello everyone, this is Ohio Dan, back with a MGTOW video. It's been quite a while since I've made any new content, almost 3 months now really. I just got caught up in a lot of other things, and then the preparation for making some of these videos ended up being longer than what I thought it would be, so it's taken me a while. But I appreciate the subscribers who have continued to watch my channel, the new subscribers that I've gotten since I've last made a video. My channel's actually still continuing to grow, so I appreciate that. In this video, I wanted to talk about what I'm calling the unconscious MGTOW. This is basically this describes a man who is going his own way in the sense of not getting married, not accepting certain risks when it comes to having children or giving a woman access to his finances, or basically putting himself in any sort of compromised position with the woman, even though he's never heard of the MGTOW community, and he doesn't really realize that other men have reached the same conclusion and have come together to an extent to form a philosophy, to form a way of life that is an alternative from gynocentrism. That's an alternative from just living for the sake of making women happy and for the sake of meeting some standard that society has for men that honestly is no longer within reach. That's no longer realistic, given the double standards and the just the ever increasing benchmarks that men have in society today. So I've discussed before how I see MGTOW as kind of a formulation of two different red pills. And the reason why I see it this way is because you can understand certain aspects of what we call red pill knowledge and still be anti MGTOW in many ways if you don't have the complete set of knowledge that's really required to realize that MGTOW is the only choice. So one set of knowledge, as I've discussed in the past or in other videos, involves understanding male versus female nature, while the other requires a realization of man's position in society. When men realize that women have all the authority, but none of the responsibility in relationships, and that that's not really going to change anytime soon, they have the opportunity to see that MGTOW is really the only rational option for a healthy lifestyle, for making the best of your life as a man, when you realize that basically you can't just suck it up and you can't just show authority like traditional conservatives and PUAs think that you can do, because that lands you in jail, or it just gets you laughed at. It just makes you alienated from society, because society expects you to act in a gynocentric way. And, we talk about a lot of this within the manosphere, where, we have all these things that are disadvantageous to men, and nobody really wants to do anything about these things. But a lot of people on the right, especially traditional conservatives, they want you to just suck it up, be a real man, and please her in just the right way so that she won't divorce you and take all of your stuff. So when you have knowledge that that doesn't work, by seeing what goes on, and I'll get into this more as the video progresses, but when you see what happens to men who actually try to be leaders in the relationship and see that they really have no power, you have that part of the red pill. On the other hand, though, you have a lot of people, a lot of guys who are just anti-feminists, or they're fighting for men's rights, and they think that they can work with women to change the system, even though what we discuss within the MGTOW community, what we've come to realize to a large extent, is that women have no incentive to change the system. Women in general, especially when they're raised to not respect men, especially when they're raised to act like they have authority and basically use the power that they have in society, while at the same time not taking responsibility for their actions the way that men are expected to do, the result is that they're not going to care about men. They're just going to continue down this same path. In other words, they're never actually going to become the providers and protectors of society. Society is still going to expect men to do these things, but yet men are no longer rewarded for it. So when you put these two sets of knowledge together, when you realize that men have no incentive to participate in marriage, or men who do participate in marriage and men who do try to please women are basically engaging in a toxic kind of activity, because women have all the power and can just completely throw that away anytime they want to. And not only that, but you realize that it's not going to change. You realize that women tend to be hypergamous. They're going to take advantage of the system. They're not supporting the things that would be necessary to make reforms so that men actually have a fair deal again. When you realize both of these things together, the only rational choice is to really go your own way. The only rational choice is to reject the expectations that society has of you as a man, to reject what women say you should do, and just do what you think is best based on what your beliefs are, based on what you know to be true. You take basically the values and the experiences that you've accumulated, and you use that as a guide for the direction that you want to go with your life as an individual, and you stop listening to other people who basically say, "Oh, this is what you're supposed to do to be a man," or "You need to stand up for women no matter what." And you instead you focus on what you know is right, and on what you find to be important in life. So, if realizing that MGTOW is the most rational option requires specific knowledge, which I've just discussed, that in society you can't just man up, you have no authority anymore. Your position in society is basically to be the workhorse and to always put yourself last and to basically not do anything that works toward a better end for your own life, but instead just basically live to please women and everybody else. But again, the other set of knowledge is realizing that women are not going to take the reins. They're not going to actually start leading in society. They're not going to become the providers and protectors. They're not going to start acting in a responsible way. That it's just going to get worse, and the expectations of men are going to become more and more one sided, and that basically there's no reason to participate in this system. So, if going MGTOW requires this kind of specific knowledge, how is it that without discovering content in the manosphere, men are walking away from marriage and gynocentric expectations anyway, and only later discovering that other men have reached the same conclusions that they have? In other words, you see a lot of men who make content within MGTOW and the manosphere itself who say that they went their own way a long time ago. They went their own way well before they even heard what MGTOW was, because they could see what was going on. But what exactly allows men who haven't even heard of the community, have no idea what hypergamy is, Briefolt's law, they have no idea what the differences between men and women really are. They don't really understand, at least in the beginning, from the kind of starting point of the thought process. They don't understand that men have no authority over families anymore. How is it that they go from that point to understanding that, oh, I need to go my own way, because what society expects me to buy into is basically a big scam. And so I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to give a woman children because she can take those children away. I'm not going to put myself in a position where, basically I'm just going to get used up. How is it that men can get to this point and realize these things without ever even hearing of the acronym of MGTOW? So, understanding a man's position in society becomes clear to a man when he gets knowledge of the divorce rate, or the lack of due process, and just other personal experiences of disposability or gynocentrism in his own life. When men are sent to prison on unsubstantiated charges, or they have their lives ruined in a divorce, and other men see this, the idea of just manning up to deal with relationship difficulties is exposed as the absurdity it is. The falsehood that men have power while women are perpetual victims is contradicted by objective reality in this sense. And intelligent men come to understand the risks that they face when interacting with women in relationships today. And so, what it boils down to is men are taught just like women, just like everybody basically in the West today is taught that, women don't do anything wrong. And basically, men never get screwed over. Men have all the power. Men could basically rule the world. And, we need to think more of the women. We need to think more of other people because, men need to give up their power, their privilege. Basically, we're taught to a large extent that we're privileged over women. And yet, when men see what goes on in the real world, when they see men going through the divorce courts and losing everything, or when they see men having accusations made against them and no one even cares whether the evidence is there or not, and everybody just wants to throw you under the bus. When you see what happens to men who do stay married, but they basically become completely enslaved within that marriage. They become the workhorse. They don't really get any sort of reward. They're told that they have to do all the work in the relationship, and their children don't even respect them. And the woman, as I've said, has the power to take away those kids anytime she wants. But the only reason she stays is because that's the better deal for her. Other men can see this, and the more intelligent men that look at this are going to say, "Wow, we really are not in a position of authority whatsoever in families anymore. We really don't have all this power that we were told that we have over women." And the idea that man's position in society is favorable compared to women is exposed as a lie. Now, on the other hand, with what I've talked about as far as the differences between male and female nature, understanding the darker aspects of female nature can be accomplished by observing things like the feminist witch hunts that I've mentioned, or slut walks, or how women conduct themselves in relationships today. Men are usually taught that women are empathetic and loving, that women are these angelic creatures that deserve to be placed on a pedestal. But at the same time, somehow they're equal to men through that whole process. Like I mentioned with man's position in society, we are basically taught that women are these creatures that don't lie, that don't do anything wrong. We should come to their rescue. We should white knight for them because, they just deserve it in an innate way. What we see instead, though, is women marching on the Capitol while wearing their pink pussy hats and demanding the right to be a slut with no consequences. So when a man sees how Western women act in reality, in the real world, in the West, it clashes with everything he has been taught about a woman being trustworthy or honorable and special in any intrinsic way. And observant men are then equipped to see the flaws not only in male nature, which we've had pounded home into us basically since the time we were taught about men and women. We've always been taught that men are pigs. You got to watch, your daughters because men will go after them, which is probably true to a large extent. Men are horny. Men do have negative traits. And I'm not saying that women can't develop positive traits. I'm not trying to argue that all women are evil. What I'm saying is women today, or women in general, are not intrinsically good people. They're not innately good. There's nothing about them that is just by default honest or by default honorable. Women today, especially when you have a society that teaches them to not take responsibility, to disrespect men, and you can argue about how much of this is nature versus how they're raised, but women today for the most part become totally corrupt, and they treat men with such disdain and disrespect because they're never taught to take any responsibility, and yet men are taught that all women never actually do anything wrong. So just like I mentioned with men who are intelligent and can analyze the situation for what it is and aren't overcome with their emotions and with what they've been taught about how they have to get favor, to gain favor with women, they can take a step back and say, wow, women are not these special angelic, innocent creatures that we can count on to be honest. They're lying about certain things just to try to get their way. They're not taking responsibility for their actions. They're basically protesting in hats that are representative of their genitalia so that, they can get our attention because they don't like who got elected as president. I mean, that's other than Trump being president and Me Too and going after men in Hollywood. What else do women have as issues that warrants a march in these major cities? They have all these special rights when it comes to reproduction, when it comes to welfare programs that are in their favor, when it comes to being able to accuse men without any sort of real consequences, even if they're totally fabricating something, which we can see with someone like Scott Baio. I mean, we can see all these things going on that show that women actually have the upper hand in society, especially in relation to men, and yet these women are putting on their vagina hats and going out and protesting. And so it doesn't matter how much we do. That's another lesson that we learn from this, is that women, their nature is to never be satisfied. And so even if a man doesn't understand something like hypergamy, he can see that no matter what men are doing to bend over backwards for Me Too, or to, you know, continue to allow women to complain about the gender wage gap, even though it can be easily debunked, and to continue to just put ourselves last and in the real issues that men have on the back burner, and to not address those kinds of things and to still want to please women. It doesn't matter. Women just complain more, they just protest more. And like I say, the intelligent man is able to see this. The man with critical thinking skills can look at this and say, wow, this is really what women are going to do. And it's not just with something like, the protests. It's also with things like slut walks, which I guess is another form of protest. Where these women are proud sluts and they want to sleep around, and men who have been taught that women are these innocent creatures who should always be treated with kindness, and men should always be careful about controlling their sexual urges with them because women, they can be taken advantage of and all that. Men who are taught this can look at these slut walks and say, wow, never mind, all of that was pretty much a lie. And so that's what I see going on as far as understanding male and female nature. Now, both of these things that I've mentioned, understanding a man's position in society and the differences between men and women, and how women are not going to step up and take responsibility. They're not going to become the providers and protectors. They're just going to continue to blame men for all their problems. Both of these things can really be observed and realized at the same time by the kind of man that I've talked about, the man who is really capable of going his own way when exposed to these kinds of facts, when exposed to all these things going on around him. So, for example, witnessing a woman tear a man apart in the court of public opinion without any sort of trial, without any sort of evidence, puts both female nature and man's inability to defend himself in the current system on full display. You have to be able to look at this, and you see it happening repeatedly. You have to be able to say, wow, there is a dark side to female nature when women are not basically controlled. And I don't mean that in the sense of, being abusive. What I mean is men and women both have to have kind of control on their behavior. And even though we've been taught that women don't do bad things, look at what's going on now. Look at women who feel free to just make stuff up and nobody calls them out on it. And the men who are accused, no matter how alpha they are. And Kurama MGTOW made a good video about this lately. He's got one of the best new MGTOW channels that I've seen recently. He talked about how even the so-called alpha men, no matter what class of men you're calling the alphas, whether it's the rich men who have powerful positions in government, whether it's the men who are the athletes, or the men who are just the bad boys, no matter what group you're trying to define as alpha, when all is said and done, they have no power over women anymore. A woman can accuse any of these men. Just look, Donald Trump has done the best job of anybody in power, or anybody that you could possibly consider alpha, at defending himself against accusations. And he's still finding it really hard to survive. No matter what you think about Donald Trump, he's really been about the only person, the only man who has been able to rise above his accusers and the people that just oppose him in general. he's pretty much the only one that's had any success at fighting off the other side, at fighting off people who, want to bring him down based on what women are saying about him. And even I feel like even Trump is going to be brought down eventually. I don't know what form that's going to take, but I think politically speaking, he's going to be defeated at some point. I don't think he's going to get a lot of what he wants done, and something's going to stick eventually. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But, even Trump is constantly having to fight against all these accusations because women have so much power in society that the accusations and the ammunition that they have against men is almost unending, and people just believe whatever they say in many cases. And it's to a point where, like I say, even the alpha males cannot really fight against this. So it's like I say, the intelligent men with critical thinking skills can look at this and realize that men do not have power in society anymore. And we have to constantly walk on eggshells with women, and women are not always good. There's a dark side to female nature, regardless of what society wants us to believe about all of it. So really, it's a matter of whether a man wants to fully take the red pill on some of these issues, because there's strong evidence just in the environment every day for both elements, for everything that it takes to really understand why MGTOW is the most rational choice. And so it's really up to the man who's observing these things to figure it out, even without the community. And that's the point that I want to make with this video, is that many men will continue to go their own way regardless of their familiarity with the MGTOW community or the manosphere as a whole. As gynocentrism becomes more extreme and demands more and more from men, it gets progressively more difficult for men to see the value in engaging in traditional relationships or trying to live up to society standards, because the value is not there anymore. The only alternative is to basically decide, I'm not going to be part of this anymore, and I'm just going to go my own way and come up with my own system for what works and what doesn't. Even if the men's community disappeared today, in other words, the number of men going their own way will continue to grow if society continues to become more hostile towards men's interests. So, what purpose does the community serve? What purpose does the manosphere and MGTOW content serve if men are capable of going their own way, and MGTOW will grow regardless of whether the content's there or not? Well, the community itself is here for self-aware men who are seeking information or who want to learn the details about female nature and the situation for men in society. Even though the basic understanding necessary to pursue this philosophy is available simply by observing the world and using one's own critical thinking abilities, as I've said. MGTOW content can also help men who have generally adopted this kind of lifestyle already, but who may be willing to change their minds if the overall environment appears to improve. So, in other words, if it seems like things aren't so gynocentric, or, if men see these anti-feminist women coming out and saying, oh, I oppose feminism, men who aren't fully aware of what's going on, they may buy into that. They may believe that, oh, women are going to come on board now and we're going to change things, even though nothing's changing. And even though the whole system is basically still geared toward just believing whatever a woman says and never making her take responsibility. So the community is here to allow men to really understand what's going on, why things are the way they are, rather than just reacting and going MGTOW based on what they see happening and not really thinking about the underlying causes. So, as I've said, formally introducing these men to the relevant concepts can allow them to understand the situations that they have better and realize the value that they bring into any future decisions that they make. However, as long as the situation keeps deteriorating for men the way that it is, as long as, Me Too continues to gain steam and women keep protesting no matter what men do for them and all this kind of stuff, as long as this continues to get more extreme, simply recognizing what's going on in the environment is enough for the intelligent man to opt out of playing his expected role and to reject things like marriage and other traditional forms of relationships and just ways of living that don't work when you are no longer rewarded as a man for making those choices. So the conclusion to all of this is that the growth of MGTOW is almost inevitable, regardless of how much the online content actually grows over time. Even if all the videos and articles informing men about female nature and the dangers of long-term commitment disappeared overnight, the culture itself will continue educating men the hard way on their status in the West. And the hard way is this person that I knew, my best friend or somebody in my family, got divorce raped, or this person who tried to do the right thing ended up being accused by a woman in his workplace because she was jealous of his position. She was jealous that he got a promotion or something like that. So that's the hard way. That's how a lot of men are going to continue to learn, but it's effective and it's not ideal, but nonetheless, many men are not stupid and they're going to see what's going on. And content creators can play an important role in developing our knowledge, but a basic assessment of the current environment can be made by men without this resource. And so more men will go MGTOW pretty much no matter what. And it's just a matter of how difficult the learning process will be for a man who has the critical thinking skills and has the kind of awareness of his own life to reach the conclusion that he should go MGTOW, to reach the conclusion that it's not even a matter of like trying to make a commandment that he should do it's the only rational choice. When you can't fix the system and the system just wants to exploit you, you remove yourself from that system. And so the question that I wanted to answer was, how is it that you have so many men who come into the MGTOW community who start making content about their own experiences? How is it that they are able to come into the community and say, I've been MGTOW my whole life, I just didn't know what it was. This happened 10 years ago, and this is why I decided to go my own way. And now I'm just discovering that other men are doing this too. I've always found that to be interesting. And I knew that, obviously there's a way for that to happen without being aware of what MGTOW is. But basically, when you break it down into its elements, the way I've tried to here, you can see how men are actually treated in society when they try to show any sort of authority. You can see how men are treated when they try to do the so-called right thing, when they get married, when they white knight for women, when they just believe what a woman tells them and they trust them and they go along with what we're for the most part taught as men, that women are special and they're nice and we just need to be nice to them, and they're capable of love and just valuing you as a person the way that we do for women, for people in general. And then you find out with what you see going on in society that that's not what's going on. You find out that there's a dark side to female nature and that men really have no power in relationships anymore, not even over themselves. Really, men just put themselves in a compromised position whenever they give a woman power over them. Even men who are married a lot of the time are miserable, even when that marriage lasts and is supposedly successful. Women have complete control once the man decides to tie the knot. And so, and of course, it goes beyond just marriage. It's just the risks of dealing with women. And as I've mentioned, you can see that women, no matter what men do, they just continue to complain. They continue to make accusations. What more can we do? We're already taking away men's due process rights. We're already conceding that marriage is a trap, and society tells men they should just do it anyway. What else is it that we can do? Well, now women are starting to rally around the idea that they shouldn't have to pay for, the pink. They shouldn't have to pay the pink tax. They shouldn't have to pay for their reproductive needs, and men are supposed to pay for that too now. And it's just, no matter what we do, there's always something else that women will dig up that they find to be oppressive. And men are looking at this and saying, enough is enough. Even if they've never heard of MGTOW, they're saying, I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to just trust women when I see how women are acting in society today. Yes, I know not all women are like that, but I can see what women are doing today. And again, this is from the perspective of a man who's never even heard of what MGTOW is. So MGTOW will continue to grow. It's just a matter of, are men going to go their own way in the hardest possible manner, with the most difficult, the most treacherous way? Are they going to get married and get divorced and then find MGTOW? Are they going to trust a woman and then have that woman get jealous of him at work or something like that, and then have a false accusation made against them? Are we gonna have men who have children and then aren't allowed to see those children, but they still have to pay child support? Are they going to find MGTOW after that, or can they discover the community, the men's community in general, before that happens? And so that's really the difference. But one way or the other, MGTOW is going to continue to grow, because not all men are stupid. There are men who are intelligent enough, who haven't ever heard of MGTOW, they've never heard the acronym before, who can see what man's position in society really is, and the complete lack of power and the disadvantage he has in his interactions with women. And he can see that not all women are good. In fact, there are all kinds of crazy women who, no matter what you do as a man, they're not going to respect you, they're not going to appreciate you and other men. Everything's always going to be your fault, and they're just not going to take responsibility. So men are going to figure out that going their own way is the most rational choice. It's just a matter of whether it's done in a hard way or whether it's done in a relatively easy way by discovering MGTOW content and rationally choosing not to go down the path that society and women tell you to go down in general, and instead making healthier decisions for yourself before it gets to the point where you've been destroyed in divorce court or someone's made an accusation against you, and a big piece of your life has been taken away because you didn't think that it would happen to you, and you didn't fully accept what man's position in society really was, and what female nature can really involve when things go badly. You didn't want to accept that, and only now are you discovering MGTOW. Only now are you learning the hard way what the truth is, in contrast to what you've been taught about women and what you've been taught about what good men are supposed to do. So is it going to be the hard way, or is it going to be the relatively easy way in discovering MGTOW content before you decide to get married, before you decide to put your neck on the line for women in society, and before you decide to basically white knight and be part of the gynocentric system? Are you going to walk away from that early, or are you going to discover later that that's what you needed to do because the MGTOW content wasn't there, because you didn't know of the manosphere? So that's the difference that this content can make. It's to help a man realize all this stuff before he has to go through the ringer, and before he learns the hard way that the most rational choice is to stay single, live for what you find to be important in life, and to not be part of a gynocentric system that wants to exploit you.